I didn't scream when his fingers closed around my wrist. I went sting, as has always been my first weapon. The taxi idled, impatient. My husband waved from the porch, all charm and teeth, the kind of smile you wear when the ending is already written. The gardener's hand trembled. Dirt under his nails, eyes wet with something that wasn't rain. "Please," he whispered. "Don't go." I smiled back at my husband, lifted my suitcase, and slid into the back seat. The door shut with a soft, final click. I told the driver to pull away. I watched the house shrink in the mirror. I counted to 30. Then I asked him to stop at the corner and let me out. I doubled back on foot. Cut through the hedges. Slipped into the guest house like a rumor. I locked the door and held my breath until my heart remembered how to beat quietly. An hour later, a black van pulled up. I stopped breathing when I saw what came out of it. The house had a way of listening. Floorboards remembered footsteps. Walls kept secrets in their plaster. From the guest house window, I could see the driveway, the gravel laid too neatly, the roses I'd pruned myself. The air smelled like gasoline and old money. The men stepped out first. No uniforms. No hurry. Efficient shoes. One of them carried a clipboard. Another rolled a gurney down the ramp like this was a delivery, not a theft. My husband met them halfway, sleeves rolled, watch off. He shook hands the way you do when you've rehearsed it. I pressed my palm to the glass and watched my life being itemized. My phone buzzed. A message from my husband already sent. "Boarding yet? Love you." I turned it face down and listened. I didn't marry a monster. I married a man who learned how to look like one slowly. At first, he was attentive. The kind of attentive that feels like safety. He remembered my coffee order, my mother's birthday, the way my shoulders tighten when I'm lying. He liked plans. Lists. Control disguised as care. I mistook precision for devotion. The cracks were small. Comments dressed as jokes. Decisions made, for us, that felt suspiciously like for him. A habit of locking doors twice. A habit of checking my location. When I asked, he'd kiss my forehead and say, "You worry too much." I did worry. I worried quietly. The gardener came with the house, a thin man with a bent back and eyes that missed nothing. He spoke little, but when he did, it mattered. Over time, I learned his routines. The way he paused before the shed, the way he pocketed his phone when my husband walked by, the way his mouth tightened when a certain van passed the gate at night. Once, while trimming roses, he asked me if I believed people could disappear without leaving a trace. He didn't look at me when he said it. I laughed. He didn't. From the guest house, I watched the men wheel the gurney inside, empty. Prepared. My husband signed something. The clipboard moved. Ink scratched. That's when I understood the gift. Paris wasn't a surprise. It was an alibi, a solitary trip. First class. Photos to be posted at the gate. Timestamp smiles. My absence would be documented, my return delayed. The house would quiet. A death could be tidy. They weren't going to kill me with violence. They were going to erase me with paperwork. I'd felt it weeks before. The sudden push for life insurance updates. The casual mention of what ifs. The way he insisted I see a doctor for stress. The new locks. The guest house stocked with supplies I didn't ask for. I started keeping my own list. Passwords, dates, names. A copy of a policy tucked into the lining of my suitcase. Voice memos recorded at night. Whispered facts cataloged like evidence in a trial only I knew was coming. I didn't confront him. Confrontation is for people who still believe in explanations. The men returned to the van empty-handed. The gurney stayed inside. The clipboard closed. My husband laughed, actually laughed, and clapped one of them on the shoulder. Money changed hands. I saw the envelope. They left. The house exhaled. That's when I moved. I slipped out the back, cut across the lawn, and knocked once on the gardener's door. He opened it before he didn't look surprised. He looked relieved. "They came early," he said. "I know," I replied. He handed me a second phone, burner. "Everything's on there. Times, plates, voices. I recorded when I could." I nodded. "You did good?" He shook his head. "You don't know how many." "I know enough. Revenge doesn't begin with rage, it begins with patience." I waited until dusk. Until my husband showered. Until he poured himself a drink and practiced grief in the mirror. I waited until he called the airline to check in on my imaginary flight. Then I sent the message. Delayed. Weatherview. I watched his shoulders drop. I called the insurer next. Calm voice. Verified identity. I asked questions that sounded innocent and recorded everything. I called the doctor he'd paid to write notes about my instability. Left a voicemail asking for clarification on falsified records. Then I called the police, not to accuse, but to ask for help. I said I feared for my safety. I said my husband had made arrangements I didn't consent to. I said there were men and a van and a gurney and I had proof. I sent files, audio, GPS logs from the gardener's phone and mine. Silence followed, then movement. When the black van came back, it wasn't alone. Red and blue lights don't make a sound at first. They announce themselves in the way faces change. My husband stepped onto the porch, confusion perfectly timed. He raised his hands too fast. He said my name like a prayer that might still work. I walked out from the guest house. He stared at me as if he were seeing ghost he'd ordered and didn't expect to arrive early. You, he started. I held up the phone. Smile? I said. You're being documented. They took him in front of the roses, the same roses I'd pruned. The gardener stood beside me, hat in hand, back straighter than I'd ever seen it. The officers spoke in low tones. Paperwork again. Always paperwork. My husband didn't look at me when they put him in the car. He looked at the house, at the life he'd curated so carefully. At the ending he'd misjudged. I didn't cry. Crying is a luxury for after. After is quieter than you expect. The guest house became mine. The locks changed. The policies reversed. The doctor lost his license. The men in the van found their names in places they didn't want them to be. The gardener kept his job. I learned his first name. Paris refunded the ticket. I never went. Sometimes I sit in the garden at dusk and listen to the house remember new footsteps. Mine. I think about how close I came to becoming a story told by someone else, edited for sympathy, buried under flowers I'd never smell. I think about the moment at the taxi, the hand on my wrist, the choice to be still. Justice didn't roar. It clicked into place. And every night, when I lock the door once, only once, I remind myself of the simplest truth he forgot. The perfect crime depends on a silent victim. I was never silent.